Welcome to the T-Squared Dad's Brown Bag Podcast. Here's your hosts, Kyle Baker and Dieter Burrell. All right, welcome back to the T-Squared Dad's Brown Bag Podcast. It's Dieter and Kyle here, as always, and we got a late show tonight, Dieter. It's kind of a little bit on me. I've been studying a lot here lately for my tests, and it's hard to scratch away some time to sit down and have a chat.
Yeah, I support you for, staying focused. I know you been taking some good supplements too to help you stay focused and try to get these tests taken care of.
I have, man. I'm looking for...
What other stuff that you taking now?
I'm looking for any edge I can get, to be honest with you. I think on the last show I told you I was taking Alpha Brain. I'm taking some other nootropics now and just trying to beat the stress and get a little bit of extra energy. So
now you told me the other day that you actually were having some really good vivid dreams, which tells me that this supplement is kind of doing some good things to your brain too.
Yeah, they say that's one of the side effects to taking some of that stuff, is it kind of reconnects some of the neural pathways and things like that. I'm not 100% up to date on all the science behind it, but based on what I've found, it seems to be working pretty good. I normally study late at night because the kids and working all day, and I fall asleep, and I guess that stuff's still kind of active, and I tend to have extremely lucid dreams now, and I even sometimes study about or dream about the things I've been studying about, so which is really good, because apparently the only time that you create long-term memories is when you're sleeping. Everything else is short-term, which I didn't know that before, and I really didn't put enough emphasis on sleep on the last test that I took. So I'm trying to do that now, and trying to find time to sit down and talk to you for everybody that's out there listening is definitely a priority, but it becomes a little bit more difficult. So like tonight, it's like 10:30 at night right now when we're recording, and but it's important to do these kinds of things too. It's kind of, it's good to download to you and chat and see what all is new going on in the world. I think in the last episode though, Dieter, we were talking and you were headed down to Miami to go to a leadership conference.
Yeah, it was a really good leadership conference. It was the Jacob Leadership through the AIA. And they have a great program. Learning a lot. Got to meet some of the folks, and believe it or not, for as much as COVID has impacted us in our everyday life, having that interaction with people to try to get to know them, it's vital, because you can make better connections with people than you would if you were trying to do like a web-based communication.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
It's definitely better to be in person. Was everyone still wearing masks down there when you were there?
We were actually at the Hollywood Public Library, which they had some regulations so that everybody would have to. What was funny is the chairs were, I think, about 7 or 8 feet apart from each other, so we all had to sit in a designated area. And they wouldn't let any more than X number of people inside that one room at a time. So
okay, so you still had quite a bit of restrictions, because I think since this trip down to Miami, they've kind of lifted all of the mandatory Florida restrictions. So that hopefully, that's one thing I like to do, is go and meet and network with people. Like whenever you go to these leadership conferences and stuff like that, it's good to be able to put a face with a name, and communicate with people without a mask on makes it a little bit easier. So I was wondering if you guys did have to wear masks while you were in there.
We were.
Okay.
We were.
What was your biggest takeaway? Or I know it was multiple days. Was there one day that stood out more, or one lecture that stood out more than the others to you?
Yeah. The biggest takeaway, I'm gonna say, was the public speaking.
Okay.
And it was focus towards doing presentations. You know how sometimes we had to present to the county for a particular project, or we have to submit requests for qualifications, and then you have to go up there and present your team and everybody and how well you can do the job that they're asking of people, because sometimes you get invitations as architects and engineers,
or like an architectural review board or something.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
And they talked a few points, and I'm going by memory right now because my notes are in the car. But one of the critical things he said, posture. Always stand forward. Shoulder feet apart. Always keep your elbows bent. Relax. And always try to maintain eye contact when you're talking to people. Don't point. Those are some critical items or things that he stated. Don't do the countdown with the fingers. I don't know if you guys remember when you guys were kids and the teacher would say, "All right, you did this wrong." And then they're pointing down at the fingers with the other finger.
Oh yeah.
You did that wrong. If you guys could be here, I could maybe show you, but I'm going to try to describe what I'm doing. It's like, so palms in with your elbows, shoulder apart. And then when you point, start with pinky fingers and point up instead of pointing forward. That's a very non-aggressive.
Yeah, it's less aggressive doing it that way, huh?
Yes, it's a very. If you guys ever notice how politicians, when they're communicating with people, they don't ever use a finger. They always kind of keep their hands with their knuckles. They're always kind of pointing at things with their knuckles, and they never use their finger to point at anything. That's a very non-aggressive gesture. Pointing at people, it's another not what not to do in public speaking. Keep eye contact. That's one critical thing, and try to maintain not just don't lean on either side of your body. Like if you're putting too much weight on one leg or another, just shoulder width. Point at people, look at them. Try to move forward. Work the room as you're looking around. That's critical items to do. And always trying to interact with folks, trying to bring him in to the topic. One of the things that we did was the coach said, "Okay, guys, in the meantime, I'm going to talk to you guys about this kind of stuff. We're going to have each one of you guys go up and talk about your hometown." And so everybody got a chance to talk. And there were some people that seemed very fluid to the way they talked. And there was one he was actually a professor. I think it was a professor at one of the colleges down there in South Florida. I don't remember which one it was. But he was very fluid the way he talked, but he didn't have good eye contact.
Yeah.
He was always looking to the sides. He was always looking down, like if he was trying to memorize things to say. So we had to break that down. We showed we talked about the positives, we talked about some of the negatives, things that he could work, and then I think every person had a chance to go up, and we could see some of the things that we shouldn't be doing. Actually, I was second to the last, and I kind of sort of haphazardly joked around and said, I kind of took my time because I probably would have been the second person to raise my hand and go up, but I kind of just wanted to take a step back and just watch everybody and learn from the way they were kind of doing things. So I stood up and started talking about Pensacola. And one of the biggest things that I mentioned when I was doing the talking about Pensacola was something that I think my wife Kristen had mentioned to me, and we joke all the time about Top Gun. Top Gun, I think, was filmed, or most of it was filmed, or some of it was filmed here in Pensacola, and they even mentioned it. And I think everybody got a chuckle out of it. They interacted with me the moment I said, everybody knows Top Gun. It was filmed in Pensacola. People can kind of, at that moment, relate to Pensacola through some film, even though it's in the 90s, I think it was filmed.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about the beaches and the nightlife, and how it's impacted. COVID has impacted the community, and we just went and try to.
So what were some of the things, if you can remember back to that time? What were some of the things that they pointed out that you needed to work on, or something that you saw someone before you doing that you thought maybe you were doing, so you tried to make sure you were counteracting that? I know that one of the things that I do is the eye contact. I'm really good about making eye contact when I'm really sure about what I want to say, but I always joke it's like I'm searching for words by looking, right? So whenever you search for something, you're looking around for it, and it's like I'm trying to look around the room as if there's going to be a word plastered on the floor that I'm trying to recall back to what I'm trying to say.
Number one thing he said that it was vital is practice.
Yeah.
It's just no matter if it's a small group or a large group, practice what you're gonna say. Look at yourself in the mirror. See how your hands. I think it would be great if people recorded themselves. But if you had a mirror, practice what you're gonna say. Go down the list. He says one thing. He calls it a power move, and there's usually this pause that happens. I just did it right now, where it's called. They say he calls it a power move. So before you start talking about something, you pause for 2 seconds, and all of a sudden you capture some people will be looking down at a piece of paper, and all of a sudden they hear this pause. They tend to have the tendency to look up. And then you do that in the beginning of your speech, and then you do it at the very end. And it's supposed to be a power move, which kind of gets people to look back up. Because sometimes people get lost in handouts or any sort of form that people get handed to look at. Another thing too that people have the tendency to do, and I didn't have to do it because I didn't have a PowerPoint next to me. They tend to have a tendency of turning around and looking at the PowerPoint and then just literally repeating what the PowerPoint said.
Right.
And then people just have these elaborate PowerPoints that have 26 bullets. The PowerPoint was not intended. He says that's one of the things that he's noticed. He's always noticed that, and he's critical of his own PowerPoints, is that people try to list all these things in the PowerPoint, and the PowerPoint is not intended for that. It's intended to hit major big points.
Yeah.
And if you need to use it to read off of it, then you've just failed. And that was one of the things, that the pause, the hand gestures, the shoulder width apart. Turn your body. Don't turn your neck. Don't lean. Try to work the room. In other words, don't stay stationary.
Yeah.
Move with your feet forward to the side. When you're talking to people, lean forward. Sometimes you're fixated because of a microphone, but you could always kind of try to work as best as you can with the limited resources you may have. And it takes practice. So
yeah,
biggest takeaway is practice. You'll get better. It's just a matter of training yourself to think that way.
Yeah. I've always heard that pointing your toes at the audience that you're trying to communicate to, whether it's one person or the left side of the room or the right side of the room, that little bit of movement of moving your feet to the direction in which you're trying to present to, is very powerful to the people that are perceiving the information that you're up there giving, or the person that you're talking to. It's when you point your feet at that person that you're talking to, they know that you are completely engaged with them. And it's a subconscious type thing. It's not like they're like, oh, his feet are pointing at me, now I know he's talking to me. But subconsciously, like you were saying, square your shoulders up, stand up there with confidence. A lot of people don't understand that perception is like 9/10 of what you're trying to do, right? So if you're perceived by the audience as being confident in the topic that you're talking about, even if you're stumbling around a little bit or whatever, what they really remember is that you were confident, right? So looking like you're sure of yourself, presenting your physical body in a way that is perceived by the audience as being, an expert or confident in the topic that you're speaking about, is a huge part of public speaking. It's not just about what you're saying and how you're saying it, but it's also a lot to do with your body language.
Here's another one thing that he mentioned. Try not to. I mean, I know I'm horrible at it when I'm talking because I pause for that to think through my words. But he says, try to avoid the hum, and don't. When you begin to stutter, just go silent. If you can control the silent, it's more powerful than or and. So
yeah,
keep takeaways.
You know, doing this podcast with you, it's been a good lessons learned for I think both of us, as some of those stall words that we use, the and type things that we normally try to get out of this. It's made me more aware of when I'm saying that thing, and sometimes I think people are scared of silence. Right? They're scared of no one's saying anything, so they want to just have those filler words where they don't have any silence. But it's not necessarily a bad thing to have a little bit of silence in that conversation when you're trying to gather your words or gather your ideas, and you don't have to fill all that space with all of these filler words that have no meaning. What it does really to me is kind of take away, it diminishes the power of what you're trying to say by trying to use these filler words. I think that's great. Is there any last minute things you want to tell us about what you learned?
No, I think that hit the big points. And again, guys, practice make perfect. Like I always said, tell my kids that all the time.
Yep. Well, I got to get back to studying, Dieter. I'm glad we got a chance to talk, and hopefully we won't go so long in between the next one. But as always, one last thing, the joke of the day. Why do fathers take an extra pair of socks when they go golfing? In case they get a hole in one. Thanks for listening to the T-Squared Dad's Brown Bag Podcast. Please subscribe on your favorite platform, and we will talk to you next time.